Woodmere tells the stories of Philadelphia's art and artists, and we provide experiences through exhibitions, through programs, through our education work to touch people's lives in a meaningful way, to bring creativity and expression into our community's life through experiences with art. This year's Stay Home Gala, The Party, honors the 3 artists who have been involved in Woodmere's Collections Management Committee for the last 10 years. This year we honor Penelope Harris, Peter Paone, and Bill Scott. Each of them is an extraordinary artist in their own ways. Their work is very different. We celebrate them because of their extraordinary contribution to the life of this museum and their contribution to astonishing growth in this museum's collection, which each of them has supported and nurtured and dedicated their intellectual energies to and creative energies to in so many ways. Peter Paone is a wonderful artist who describes his images as reality reassembled. An example of this in Woodmere's collection is A Bird Buys a House. Humans are small, but birds and cats are giant, and the assembled tableau conveys a sense of how strange things can be, but also how wonderful. Peter grew up in the Italian community of South Philly, and he described how the mystical qualities of religious art, which was the only art he knew as a child, inspired his thinking about his own art as an adult as a vehicle for expressing something emotional and spiritual about the human condition. Peter recounted to me his experience as a young artist in his 20s, going to Paris and knocking on the door of Georges Braque, one of the great modernists of the European avant-garde, who opened his door to Peter and brought him into his studio. I always think of the elegance of Braque and his creativity with materials and textures when I look at the elegance of line in Peter's work, with his mastery and ability to create textures in layers and collage them together, as he says, reassembling objects but also textures and light. Peter's work has an expressionism that is unique and often conveys the strangeness of the world and the difficulties of the forces that have an impact on our lives. Peter's work is about a dynamism of forces at play. Play is a word that comes to mind when I think of the work of Bill Scott, whose lyrical abstractions are remarkable for their complexity of line, color, and light. For me, Bill expresses a world that is as mysterious as it is wonderful and full of surprises. He has an amazing ability to evoke emotion through abstract forms, and his paintings offer a journey that can be as humorous as they can be dark. And this is despite a surface intensity of cheerful color. I especially love Bill for the reverence he carries for artists in the history of art who have inspired him most. These are Joan Mitchell, Arthur B. Carles, Bert Morisot, and Mitzi Melnikov, or at least those are 4 artists that come to mind that I know from my conversations with Bill. And when I see his work, I feel somehow their energy shining through him. There's a painting in Woodmere's collection, The Cherry Tree by Bill Scott, that is directly inspired by an important painting by Morisot. And I adore the way Bill works out his admiration and his love for the great Impressionist artist through structures and growth-like energy in his own language of painting. At first glance, Penny Harris is a realist painter, And both her mother and father were accomplished realist painters in the early decades of the 20th century. But on second view, Penny's paintings are no more about realism than those of Bill Scott or Peter Paone. Penny always invents a strange universe within the four edges of her paintings in which objects can have either a magnetic attraction or even a repulsion between them, it sometimes seems, or the rules of the illusion of space are distorted so that relationships between objects don't make sense, or space itself seems to be tumbling forward. In a painting at Woodmere called Blue Beads, objects seem strung together. They all touch as if connected like a big necklace, with the exception of a single object, a lone pair that sits alone in the upper right. Walking through the galleries at Woodmere, I've had the experience of overhearing conversations of visitors who try to figure out what's going on with that pair. Why is it alone? Why is it isolated? And of course, these are conversations not about pairs and inanimate objects, but conversations about people and emotions. The work is about a question that is quite abstract. How is the reality depicted in the art different from the reality that we know in our own worlds that we experience every day? Blue Beads looks like a setup for a lovely lunch, but as you engage with it, your mind is off to the races. I want to thank everyone for your honoring of these three remarkable artists and all that they bring to Woodmere, that we are able to share with others as a result of their involvement, their generosity, and I want to thank you all for your spectacular support and your love for this institution and for the community that we serve. Thank you.